as mentioned, I'm head of a group called Stakeholders Affairs and Strategic Partnerships in the area of sustainable agriculture. I am based in Monheim, Germany, our headquarters of the agriculture division of Bayer, as I mentioned, Brazilian. And actually, I'm a political scientist by training, but I've been working on Food and Ag now for more than 20 years on corporations like Bayer, BASF, and Mars Incorporated in the food sector. So let me start with maybe. Can you see the big screen, or or it's just the slide deck? Sorry for the technicalities. I have 3 screens today.
It's not the big screen. We see also the next one.
So let me share the other screen with you. And then you should be seeing now.
Now it's good.
Great, awesome. That's the life in the virtual world. So mentioned, I will focus on our strategy in the sustainability agriculture, and then as well how we have been transforming our business in certain extent. But this is part of as you all familiar who is in the agriculture sector, this is actually part of what agriculture is going through today, which is a big transformation and in certain aspects disruption in digital and in sustainability. And I'll touch some of that, of course, from our point of view and the learnings from some of the partnerships that we have. So just the first slide, how we see sustainable agriculture in general terms. Of course, looking at farming principles and practices that aim, that has an outcome in mind, they are enablers of outcome. And for us, sustainable agriculture, think as a farm as an ecosystem, the outcomes are multiple, right? So in the environment, of course, in the social, in terms of livelihoods, and in the profitability of the farm, in terms of farm economics. But looking at outcomes that improve soil health, that enhance natural resources or help us farmers to produce more with less. And here we're talking about water, we're talking about inputs like crop protection or fertilizers. It strengthens ecosystem services, and that's about a new business models. But for example, when you think about biodiversity on unproductive land, or how farmers are actually being rewarded for some of the environmental services that they can provide, reductions on GHG emissions, sequestration of carbon. We have a big platform on carbon farming today, which we are looking, of course, of emissions reductions, but as well on the science of sequestering carbon on soil and how that helps soil health, productivity, but as well could be a way of a new revenue for farmers when we think about the development of carbon markets. So, of course, for us, it's very important and has the same ways that those practices are implemented in a way that it looks at the individual agronomic and commercial needs of farmers. Though we have global principles, a corn grower in the US has slightly different needs than a rice grower in India or a potato grower in the UK, looking at the way they produce, the way they incentivize, and the technologies that they need to implement certain practices. So looking at farm just as a start point, so you can understand a bit more on our principles and our focus areas in terms of innovation and R&D, looking at the farm as an ecosystem, and then thinking about how a corporation like Bayer and others in the ecosystem can provide not only products, but services to farmers so they can provide those sustainable outcomes. Then going on the specific of Bayer Crop Science, so our business principles when thinking about sustainability and how we are investing from a pipeline perspective, but as well from a enabling partnerships perspective, and even investment on startups or on other business. So we are looking we focus on transformation topics where agriculture can make a difference. We really believe agriculture is part of the climate change solution. often portrayed it as a problem. We have to solve it, and we believe it's part of the solutions and can be really a powerful sector in terms of carbon reduction and in terms of carbon markets for farmers. So another point, always keep the farmer's perspective in mind. We need to understand farmers' pain points. Most of our partnerships today are really looking at understanding farmers' pain points. How do they see sustainability? How can they access, or how hard it is for them to access technology, or not only to access, to utilize technology in a way that brings them the total value that it could bring. How do they access, for example, other revenues opportunities? So we are trying to work with the value chain partners and, of course, with governments to help farmers, to help to understand farmers' pain points, sometimes things that we don't even think about. We recently learned in Europe, climate smart agriculture. We recently learned in Europe that farmers, of course, want to be more sustainable, but farmers don't know how to access all the incentivization mechanisms that we have in Europe, for example. And so why not working on a capacity building, on awareness campaigns where they could understand and tackle this? This could really be transformation in terms of the speed that they introduce new practices, for example, in their farms. So farmers' perspective, that's what I mean. And of course, developing technology that fits those needs and fits farmers' needs, and not technology for the sake of technology. Link sustainability strategy to our core business and R&D technology. So we are committed to sustainable agriculture. So how can we make it happen faster and in a way that fits farmers' needs? And then we, of course, are very committed to have measurable and transparent KPIs when talking about our own corporate commitments. And I think I have a slide on that specific. So what are our 3 areas of focus and priorities? And this was recently shared by my CEO, actually, when we were having our R&D day. So what is driving buyer investment in R&D? Those are the 3 areas. So the global challenges, right, of growing population and increasing protein demand, even when we think about alternative proteins, but considering the global as the low and the low and middle income countries as well. So our priority is to develop technologies that help to produce and protect higher yielding seeds, right? And higher yielding in the farm, because farmers need to be productive and profitable, but productive first of all. So examples of pipeline of sustainable solutions that we're working on: high yielding, disease resistant seeds. We are investing on something called a smart corn system, which is a short starchy corn, which can really be a game changer in terms of climate resilient, because it's more resilient to winds and to climate change, actually, to certain weather conditions, on top of being a system that can really help manage resources. Looking at next generation of traits and crop protection, looking here at a portfolio that helps to lower environmental impact of agriculture. So how we develop technologies that help us to produce more with less. Then using fewer natural resources, the second point, already touched on it. Then looking at ways of reducing water use and looking at water quality in agriculture. And then the second piece, looking at climate change and how do we advance carbon smart future of ag. And here the digital tools, the digital platforms, we recently announced a partnership with Microsoft, the digital tools to help, for example, in the area of carbon sequestration measurement. So the science and the measurement is right and can be trusted by public and private partners, and how we look at advancing conservation tillage systems as well, which is important when we look at soil health. And this not only for large farmers, which is indeed our largest footprint in terms of a company, but we have a commitment of empowering 100 million smallholders, developing technologies and advancing ecosystem that will help them, for example, to connect to markets or off-takers of their sustainable produced crops. Then I have more 2 slides, but when we think about those R&D, so you saw what drives us, what are the challenges that we want to help answer with solutions. But then here you can see the areas or the platforms, so the core of our technologies. Our portfolio today looks at seeds and traits, breeding with leading germplasm, biotech in terms of resistant technologies, chemistry, and here the chemistry in terms of novel mode of action, in terms of how that chemistry can be developed in a way that uses less resources, that can be enabled by precision application, by drone application. The future of agriculture for us is, when you think about chemistry or even biologics, is can we just apply a drop of something in a very specific area of the farm, so leading to a reduction of inputs use, or maybe not chemistry, maybe biologicals or other type of technology. And then a big pillar for us, which we are completely focused, which we want to develop commercial offers and platform, is data science, is digital farming, because we think this is an enabler for better decisions, for more information, and completely connected with the sustainable outcomes that we want farmers to be rewarded to as well. Then I thought this was an interesting slide on top of our, let's call, hardcore technology. So our pipeline and the investment, we invest almost 6 billion in R&D. We have a group called LEAPS who looks at, we call it more riskier, but just because it's not core for buyers. So it looks a lot on the startup world, but it looks at other organizations and where we can invest. And invest can look many ways, not necessarily having 100% ownership, but invest or partner with those organizations. And from our LEAPS investment point of view, in agriculture, there are 4 areas of focus. LEAP 03, the others are on the pharma, on the other division. So I just brought to you the ones that matter to agriculture. So LEAP 03, solutions, technologies, ideas that can help reduce environmental impact of agriculture. We are looking at fertilizers, we are looking at chemistry in itself. So we are looking at new technologies and inputs, or just ideas, practices, things that can help us to measure and reduce environmental impact. LEAP number 7, provide the next generation of healthy crops, looking at seeds, looking at gene editing, look at plant breeding innovation, develop sustainable protein supply. This can be in the area of alternative protein. This can be in any area that we can think about reducing the footprint impacts, or just looking at sustainable protein development. And in the area which is very important to us, and it's really not our core, prevent crop and food losses. Pre-harvest, we are looking at post-harvest opportunity as well, but this is a bit more distant than our core business. And then just 2 examples. I think I mentioned to you that we are completely focused on climate smart agriculture and agriculture being part of the climate change challenge. And for us, there are some levers for success. I mentioned plant breeding, precision farming in terms of application, in terms of data science, cover crops, digital tools in itself, microorganisms. Here, can we look at seed treatment differently? Management, landscape management ideas and solutions, and the famous no-till farming. We think this is levers for emission reduction and to support carbon sequestration. And then on digital tools, I guess is obvious who is in this sector, but for us is enabler of sustainable agriculture and better decision making. And then here we are looking at evidence decision on farm, so tools for that, knowledge to help risk management. If you think about farmers transition to more changing practice or having to transition, digital tools we believe can really help to manage the risk. That's the biggest challenge in agriculture, risk management, insurance mechanism, how we reward and we incentivize conservation agriculture goes a lot on that risk element for farmers. They cannot take the risk alone. And we think digital tools support that. And then just having the data, right? The farmers having the data to make better decisions. And then just to finalize, how we see, and I talk a lot about partnerships because we don't think Bayer can answer all, and we'll have the technologies for everything. So, but we really believe on helping to accelerate transformation and helping to, and be a positive force to really help to create this ecosystem that enables sustainable agriculture even further. So we see the role of the private sector in general, and then Bayer being part of it, creating new business models, right? We created our carbon platform. We are incentivizing practices, even though we still don't have all certainty and scientific certainties on how we measure the carbon piece, the carbon sequestration piece. But we are helping. We are engaging with scientists. We're engaging with universities and other organizations to get as certain and as and farmers as connected to carbon markets as possible. So we are an active player. Enable financial mechanism. I touched the risk management. So are we really supporting sustainable agriculture? Do we have insurances that support that? Conservation agriculture, for example, and then creating ecosystems partnership, which is important, particularly for smallholders. Do we want to? How do we gonna get smallholders in carbon markets, for example, in places like Africa and Asia? So we really need to enable, off-takers and organizations that will share risk, and for that they need data, they need information, they need science. So we need to create partnership to learn as well how to design better solutions to farmers. And I think I'm almost on my time. Sorry, Dama, for that. So I hope was helpful. At least it gave you a sense of where we are directionally investing and how we see future of agriculture as well.
Natasha, thank you so much for that talk. We seem to have covered so many topics, from innovation, from the tools to the focus on the farmers and the ecosystem partnership. So there's a lot of ways that Bayer is touching upon sustainable agriculture and climate smart agriculture. And we have time for questions. And I know there were one or two that came up in person in the chat, but do we have any questions that anyone would like to pose to Natasha?
Too much in just 20 minutes. So you can digest, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or, by email. I just wanted to make sure that you see we are committed and there is a long-term view here and not only immediate investment opportunities.
So I'm curious, Natasha, if I could ask a question. You spoke here a lot about working directly with the farmers and giving them the tools. How do you work in the field? How do you reach your farmers? What aspects do you work with them?
So one example, which is great, I was talking in my home country in this case, sorry, it's just immediately top of mind. But in Brazil, for example, our carbon program in Brazil has almost 2,000 farmers. They joined the program, so they are part of our digital platform called Field View, and they joined the program. We reward them for practice like no-till and cover crops, but they joined the program because they want, with Bayer, to accelerate those innovations and help to measure the impact of their farmers in a way that will enable them to either generate carbon credits in the future or be part of some level of payment for service. And how do we do that? They share information with us, of course, but they are part of our field view where we can, with them, with their approval and with their interest, we can really get timely satellite images. We can really look, for example, what are the areas that are being conserved, native vegetation being conserved in that farm, for example. How is the land expansion and why? Where are they doing the practices that we believe are supporting carbon sequestration? And then using satellite images to assess in a low cost. The point here is how can we measure and report the outcomes of their practices in a way that is low cost, right, for them, and of course transparent and scientific valid. So we are working with them on assessing the images of those satellite images, and then looking at the farm and saying, wow, this is really showing an improved soil health, for example, or this is really helping us to track how you're managing your native vegetation. So it's a shared learning, and then helping us to develop better tools, but then even to make sure that they can report and they can share their information in a way that, you know, banks, or it will be credible for governments or banks and so on. So that's the co-creation piece that we do when I talk about farming, working with farmers as an example. So, but we have in India, US, in Europe as well, those type of investments.
Excellent, thank you. And we have another question here from Simon. Simon, maybe you want to ask directly? If you can unmute yourself.
Yes, sure. So I was just wondering, how do you traditionally partner with startups? Do you have a specific program to partner on innovation? Do you have a budget for pilots? Do you work on, as a design partner? So yeah, if you can give us a few examples.
Yes, all of those. And our entry points in general terms on startups is our open innovation on our LEAPS program that I shared on that, and I can share the slide deck later. So we are looking at, it can be a shared partner, a thought partner, or really in terms of buyer apporting some investment to accelerate, or buyer offering our footprint in terms of farms. We have our own farms and we have our forward farms. So our global footprint for startup pilots or further investigation. So we have different models. Entry point is our LEAPS program in general terms, and our focus are on those 4 areas that I mentioned: reducing environmental impact, food and crop loss, those 4 on the slide.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And maybe for another question from Gad, you had a question also for Natasha in the chat?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Natasha. Insightful presentation. Thank you. I wonder if Bayer are looking at urban agriculture and vertical indoor farming as well, or just a traditional agriculture?
No, we are, and I'm happy to send you more offline, because we have a huge investment in vertical farming in our fruits and vegetables business primarily, but as an area of focus for us, vertical farming primarily in Asia and Europe, but I can share more of that with you. I'll send some information on our current progress, but definitely an area of focus for us.
Excellent. Right on time, Natasha. Thanks so much. And Natasha's open for follow-up by email, questions afterwards, or via us or directly. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to see you guys. Thank you for your time as well and listening a bit about our work. Bye-bye. Have a great session.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bayer indeed